Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we have live Steve Wolfson. He's the Clark County District Attorney. And before we get to DA Wolfson, Jim, what do you got?
Well, I want to thank you, Steve, for, I completely forgot about Assemblyman Munford's birthday.
Yeah, I got it on my little cheat list to talk about.
Assemblyman Munford is
81.
Yeah, he's a very interesting guy. He was actually my assemblyman for a number of years before they redistrict, and we shop at the same grocery store. Yeah. Very nice guy, and I've always had a lot of respect for him, and we like to tease each other back and forth because he's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. So we like to tease each other like, oh yeah, okay, you're one of the good ones, and he'll always say the same thing back to me. Really nice guy.
I got the invitation to go. I believe his son sent it to me, and I don't go to too many events anymore. I try to pick and choose what events I'm going to, and it's not for any self-serving reason. It's just the way I feel. Yeah. But I had to go to Assemblyman Munford, although I did have a 7 o'clock dinner meeting that day. I had to go to Assemblyman Munford's birthday, 81 birthday. Yeah. And the place was packed. He had a lot of well wishes there, and if anybody that doesn't know Assemblyman Munford, he spent 36 years as a Clark County school teacher, 16 years as an assemblyman for the state legislature. But one thing because I sat with him a few times on the assembly floor when it was in session. But one thing that really breaks my heart is the way his political party treated him. Yeah. They didn't give him any type of leadership position. He was never a chair of any boards. And I thought that was discouraging, the way they treated Assemblyman Munford. And you guys know who you are. Assemblyman Munford is a great guy. He has a heart of gold, and you guys should not have treated him that way when he was a legislator. And that's the only thing that bugged me about that, the way his own party treated him.
Well, and I agree with you 100%. And here's one of the reasons why Assemblyman Munford and I grew a friendship. Is because we would have conversations back and forth years later. But when I was running for the assembly in 2008, we were doing the Veterans of Politics endorsement interview. He went first because he was in 6, I was in 8. And I listened to him, and then he sat there and listened to me. And the thing I liked about Assemblyman Munford on that day was it was very clear that he was not a hardcore partisan. He just wanted what was best. And when people started talking about education, he was like, it's kind of a two-way street. Yes, I got into education because, I want to teach and I want to educate the youth. But I also got into education because the benefit package isn't bad. I can complain about it. Get my summers off, and I'm not working super long days, so it gave me the opportunity to be able to do other things. And I was like, this guy's really honest.
So can I chime in about
Sure.
Harvey Munford for a second?
You know him.
I do know him, and one of the fondest memories I have, and it goes back a number of years, is, I'm 6'4.5". I'm pretty tall. So there's not too many people that are as tall or taller than me. Yeah. Harvey's one of them.
Yeah.
So, I'm going back 10, 15, 20 years. I always said, Harvey, I love running into you because I get to look up like this and strain my neck. Yeah. He had a good sense of humor. Yeah. He was a gentleman. He was a very, very, is a very, very nice man.
He's a very nice guy. I would like to see you in a one-on-one basketball game with
Harvey?
Munford.
Yeah, it'd be a close game. Well, he's 81. I'm not quite 81, so I may have
he looks really good for.
I may have a few moves on him.
Yeah, he looks really, really good for his age. And if you know anything about his children on his wife's side, they're all nurses.
Oh, is that right?
They're all. I mean, if you're gonna have a medical episode, that would be the place to do it.
Over at the family dinner.
Yeah, because they're all nurses. They're all RNs, and they're all in different stages of different nurses, like the pediatrician and the emergency ward and all that. So they're good. And there's another thing I wanted to bring up before we get to District Attorney Wolfson. So, yesterday I had dinner with a law student and her boyfriend, and I said, hey, and Heidi was with me, and I said, hey, come over to the house, because I don't live far, and there was he had PTSD, and he had a weapon on him, and at that time I wasn't thinking. It was open carry. This is open carry state. He had a 9 and a knife, and this is the open carry state, so it didn't bother me. And I'm used to being around weapons, so if somebody has one on them, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't think it would.
And he was in my home, okay. And as the night went along, he had an episode, and I didn't know what type of episode. If it was a PTSD episode, if it was a panic attack episode, I don't know what type. But he had a episode, and me being in the military, the first thing I'm thinking, all right, this is my home. I have loved ones here, so the first thing I'm thinking is like, this is a threat.
Right.
And I handled it as such, but I tried to be calm, because Heidi's a therapist,
yeah.
and she did an amazing job. And I tried to be calm, and I'm thinking, this person, I don't know him,
right? Yeah.
and this person has weapons on him, and that's how my mind went. But I just wanted to say that the way I handled it there I would have handled it much differently if it was outside my home,
right,
and there was no loved ones for me to worry about. I would have been more compassionate, right, more caring, more understanding. But because where the situation took place, I was in more of defense mode and want to protect and remove the threat. But I just wanted to say that I don't want to mention any names. I just wanted to say that that outside of my home, I'm a lot different than I am inside of my home, especially with situations like that. And that was a first for me inside my home. And I should have done many things. I should have said, since you're in my home, please put your weapon in the vehicle because I don't know you. Right. Or I could have just not have anybody come over at all. Yeah. But I just want to say that mental illness is a real thing, okay? And this guy, he dropped his holster. Like, he knew. He removed himself from the weapon, and thank you for that. He removed himself from the weapon on his own. So mental illness is a real thing, and he was an he was a Marine veteran that served in combat as well. So mental illness amongst veterans is real, and I just want to make sure that this guy gets the help that he needs, so this doesn't happen again. But that's all I wanted to talk about that. 'Cause it was a little bit scary, to say the least.
I can imagine.
Somebody that's going through that has weapons on them, and you're in your home, and you're like thinking, well, what's going to happen here? And you just, and I had a weapon on me, but I don't want my home to be a crime scene. And I just wanted to, I would have handled it, Jim. I would have handled it so much differently if it was somewhere else, and there was nobody I love around. I would have handled it totally differently. But because of the nature and the where it was and the people that was around, I was a little bit more like worrisome, you know, like what's going to happen, you know?
No, I understand that, and I'm just glad everything worked out.
Yeah, it did. And Heidi, you did an outstanding job. Amazing woman, and she took charge of the situation and knew exactly what to say, because sometimes you don't know what to say. Right. You say something, it might trigger that person. Yeah. You know. So. Yeah. So now we're here with the Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson. D.A. Wolfson, how you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on your show, Steve. You and I go back 20 years?
I met you in the late 90s.
Okay.
At the old courthouse. Before you even started doing your remember those commercials you used to do on Christmas time with the family?
Started the commercials in 1990. 89, 90.
Oh, so, well, it was while you were still doing it.
Yeah.
It was while you were still doing it.
Of course I remember those.
I remember those commercials. Every Christmas time, Steve Wolfson comes on with the family, wishing everybody a Merry Christmas. I thought that was so cool.
Because...
I don't remember that. I've lived here since 86.
This was primarily in the 90s, and my wife, Jackie, was a lawyer at the time, and we had 2 young girls, so we would wish everybody a safe and happy holiday season.
Yes. Oh,
and
yeah.
So we have
holiday season.
We have clips of my oldest daughter Rachel, who's now 34, and my youngest daughter Rebecca, almost 30, when they were like, 6 and 2. And we have some of the old clips, and they're hilarious.
Yeah. So we go back a lot. We go back many years, and I've always respected you. Always.
Thank you for that.
Even when you ran for city council, became city council, and then when you were going for the appointment to the DA's office, and then retained and elected, and so on and so forth.
You're aging me, Steve, because I was on the city council in 2004. That's 17 years ago.
I'm aging myself too.
Well, at the same rate, we're growing older at the same rate. That's one thing.
So, and I know I did a few things about your bio, but please, tell us about your bio. Tell us about you, and then we could start talking about stuff.
Real quickly, I've been in town 41 years. I moved here from San Diego, and if you would have asked me 41 years ago whether I would have stayed in Las Vegas, I would have said you're crazy. Because I moved here from San Diego, and I thought I'd get some experience and go back. But I fell in love with this community. I fell in love with the job because I was a young, deputy DA at the time. And without going through my whole resume, I was a DA, a federal prosecutor, and then I went into the private sector.
I didn't know you did federal work as well.
For about 20 months. I was an assistant federal prosecutor for about 20 months. And then
Paul Potter?
No, I was way before Paul. Way before Paul. Then I went into the private sector because I wanted to make a little money, actually, to be perfectly honest. And I was a private criminal defense lawyer for 25 years.
And that you were good at that.
I did. I did pretty good work.
You still got that building over there on?
It's still over there, yeah.
You still own it?
Sure do.
Oh,
sure
okay.
do, yeah.
Okay.
And then an opportunity came up 17 years ago for me to run for city council because I wanted to get back into giving to the community. I love public service, so I ran for city council and won in a special election in 2004.
What ward was that?
Ward 2. Summerlin, Piccoli Ranch, the lakes out there. And won a couple subsequent elections. But then an opportunity came up to be the district attorney.
It did.
And, it was an appointment process because my predecessor resigned. So I sought the appointment and was fortunate enough that the county commissioners appointed me. And then I've had 2 elections since then. So I've been in office coming up on 10 years. It's a great job.
It is a great job.
It's a great job. I'm very fortunate.
It's a very, very humbling job, I think.
It is. It's a lot of responsibility.
It ages you.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that the district attorney has the criminal division, of course. Everybody knows about, what we do when we prosecute people accused of committing crimes. But I also have a civil division, and I have a juvenile division, which handles the delinquency cases, the kids that are accused of committing crimes, and then the child abuse and neglect cases, which are very important. And then I have a whole family support division over on East Flamingo. So my office is about 750 employees, 160 lawyers. The largest,
What's your budget?
about 500 million.
Oh,
It's
wow.
the largest law firm in the state of Nevada. So if you look to any other public agency,
Right.
okay, whether it be the Attorney General's office or any other, the city attorney or any private law firm, I have the largest law firm.
Wow.
So I'm very fortunate. I have great people that work for me, a lot of good lawyers, a lot of staff people. Staff drives the machine, if you will. So I'm very lucky and proud of the work we do.
Yeah, that is a large law firm.
It
I
is.
must say.
It is.
And being that you have a large law firm, you have influence in the legislature. And tell us about anything that you have lobbied for or testified for when it regarding your district attorney's office.
Well, there's a number of things, Steve. In this last legislative session, there were a number of criminal justice reform initiatives, which my office, as well as the Nevada District Attorneys Association, either testified or lobbied or provided input. Bail reform is very important. There were some measures regarding bail reform.
Tell us a little bit about the bail reform.
Well, we have made a lot of changes here in Clark County in the last few years. We created the initial appearance court. And this is getting a little technical and into the weeds, but the easiest way to describe this court is that up until just a couple of years ago, if a person was arrested for a felony and they didn't receive an OR release or post bail, their custody status wouldn't be reviewed for 48 hours, and that was by a judge in the chambers. And then if the judge found probable cause, it would be another 24 hours before the person physically appeared face to face in front of a judge. That's 3 days.
So you're locked up for 3 days.
If you're not making bail or getting an OR, you're locked up for 3 days. We changed that with the IA court. That is a 7-day-a-week court, even Saturdays and Sundays, where if you're arrested and you don't receive a release or post bail, you appear in front of a judge within 10 to 20 hours.
Really?
Huge improvement. So that person who can't afford bail.
Sometimes you're not even through the process in CCDC.
Exactly.
in that time.
Sometimes you're brought in your street clothes before the judge, but it's excellent. That's part of bail reform, if you will. That's part of making a determination who should and shouldn't be released.
Okay.
Now, there are people that commit serious crimes.
Yes.
There are people that have serious criminal histories,
Yes.
and they perhaps should not be released those first few days. But the vast majority of people should. So the vast majority of people, instead of waiting 3 days to have a one-on-one with a judge, are having a one-on-one with a lawyer. The public defender is there if you don't have your own lawyer, to talk to the judge about getting released within 10 to 20 hours. That's huge.
That is huge.
And there's some other things.
Does the bail agencies, are they upset because of that?
Well, it was a commission that was formed by the Supreme Court a couple of years ago to create the IA court. We took testimony. The bail bondsmen lobbied. I was approached by many of them. I had meetings. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is what's fair and what's right and what's just.
You know, I used to be a bail agent a few
Is that
years
right?
ago. Yeah.
And you saw the light and
No, it was
it was not good.
not good. No.
So that's one thing. Another thing that we got involved in is there was a bill to abolish the death penalty. And that is a very, very high profile,
That was on my mind.
sensitive,
Death penalty.
Yeah, I was going to say, so was
controversial.
I, so
I'm
go
not gonna
ahead.
Avoid it. Listen, Steve, I own things that I should own.
Right.
And I like to talk about a little history. When I took over the DA's office almost 10 years ago, my predecessor was filing almost 20 death penalty notices a year.
He's trying to kill everybody.
Well, he had a different philosophy, okay? There are some people that do very bad things, okay?
True.
When I took over, I committed to the county commissioners and to this community to reduce that number. And I did. I reduced it to less than 10 notices per year. And more importantly, in the last 2 or 3 years, I think last year we only filed 1 death penalty notice, okay? And our homicide rate is up. We are at about a 20% increase this year to date in homicides. So what
Why is that?
Oh gosh, I think COVID has something to do with it. I think that, there's just a lot of people that are in pain and suffering. And, some of the recent deaths involving children in this community. You brought up mental health, Steve. You're absolutely right. It's a huge issue. Whether you're a veteran or not, whether you're anybody, mental health is a big part of our community. So I think that plays a huge role in why some people commit homicides. So there was a bill to abolish the death penalty. My personal opinion is this. I believe that we should have the death penalty for some of the most extreme cases. And the example I used before the legislature was 1 October. That man killed 60 people. Not 6, not 16, 60. I believe that kind of behavior warrants the worst kind of punishment. And the death penalty, the way it was written, would have abolished it totally. And there were some provisions that made it retroactive. In other words, people that were under the sentence of death from 10 or 20 years ago, from juries that concluded they should receive the death penalty, they should have their sentences commuted to life without. I didn't like that. I didn't think it was appropriate. There were discussions about compromise. There were discussions about how we can maybe insert some laws so that we file less and less death penalty cases. The governor has spoken about that, and the governor and I are in agreement on that. But the legislature didn't want it. Our current governor. The legislator, the folks that were advocating for the abolishment, I was told did not want to compromise. It was an all or nothing thing, and that's why I believe it died.
Wow.
The bill to abolish the death penalty. Now, I have spoken publicly about something else. The trend in this country, more states are abolishing the death penalty. As we move forward, more and more. Now, the majority of states still have the death penalty, but we're moving in a direction of abolishment. I've always been told that the majority of Nevadans favor the death penalty. That majority, though, is getting less and less.
That's true.
I think that rather than have our legislature, after just a few hours of testimony, make an important decision, why don't we have something like a referendum? Why don't we put it on the ballot? And that way we can have great discussions over months of time, both sides. We can hear from victims, we can hear from the advocates to abolish, and then let the general citizenry, you and I who vote to determine whether to abolish it or not. So that's what I have advocated for most recently.
I agree with you on that point. However, here's the disappointing thing for me, and it has anything to do with you, is the general public. You said you and Steve and I, we're not the general public.
I know where you're going, Jim.
You know what I'm saying?
They don't know. The general public doesn't know.
So ballot initiatives, to me, I don't really care for, because even though now, I think for the most part, ballot initiatives have done a really good job. When you get your voter's guide, they do a really good job of explaining the arguments for, the arguments against.
And when the public is educated on the subject matter.
Right. And so I think just that in general, most people just don't educate themselves enough on it.
I agree, Jim, and it's the responsibility of elected officials like myself and others to step up to educate people. The background check law is a good example. A lot of people are opposed to background checks, but that was a fiercely contested question. I believe
for the weapons.
Yes, background check on weapons. And it passed by a slim margin, but that's the voters that spoke out. And I think that a lot of the voters were educated because there was a lot of discourse. There was a lot of discussion about that law.
Well, you're talking about taking away people's guns, they're up in arms.
Absolutely, no pun intended, up in arms, right?
Which is interesting you bring that up, is because how much flack did you and I get
About background checks?
About background checks. And
A lot
we're
of
like,
flack.
we're like, yeah, we're for it. And they're like, wait a minute.
Aren't you Republican?
Yeah, aren't you Republican? Well, shall not be infringed. We're like, yeah, okay, not everybody should have a firearm.
Exactly.
Not somebody that's mentally ill should have a
Right.
firearm. Or somebody that says, I'm going to go kill somebody and you're going to give them a firearm.
Or has a protective order against them.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Or has recently been in a mental facility.
Yes.
You know, there are certain people, I think you hit the nail on the head, Steve, that should not have weapons.
Yes,
but the vast majority of people should have them. I own weapons.
Yeah.
I have weapons like you, Jim, for self-protection.
Right.
And that background check law is not taking away weapons from people for self-protection.
You know, because I want to get back to the
sorry.
the death
I
penalty,
got
but since we brought up weapons, you know, I've carried a concealed weapon since 2003. Mm-hmm. Do you know how many times I pulled it out on somebody?
0?
0 times. I've even got into fisticuffs with the weapon in my pocket and never pulled it out.
So that you could avoid having to pull out that weapon. Because once you pull that weapon, you escalate.
That's it.
Everything.
And in the Marine Corps, you pull a weapon, you press a trigger, and that's how it goes. So I don't pull at all. And I've had fisticuffs with the weapon in my pocket and never once thought about pulling it because my life is not in danger.
Right.
You know, and nobody else around me was in danger, so there was no reason for me to pull a weapon out.
Right.
But I want to get back to the death penalty.
Okay.
I'm on the fence. And here's the reason why. You know, there's so many cases that DNA has come up, and the person that is in prison for 20 years didn't do it. And if the death penalty was to go, they would have been dead. They would have been an innocent person, and we as a community would have killed an innocent person for a crime they didn't do. And then there's so many people that do heinous crimes that the death penalty is too kind to them. You know? So that's why I'm on the fence with the death penalty. I'm not sure if we should abolish it or if we should keep it or we have to change the law that says that beyond a reasonable doubt, that this person actually did do these heinous crimes.
That is a legitimate argument. It's a legitimate argument because we do not have a perfect criminal justice system. I do believe there are people in prison that should not be, that did not commit the crime. I established the first conviction integrity unit in the state of Nevada. This is what a lot of people refer to, you know, the Rocky Mountain Project, the Innocence Project. When a person brings a claim of innocence forward, a person that says, I have said I was innocent from day one. I've always claimed I was innocent, but a jury convicted me. And now 10 or 20 years later, new information comes forward. So I created a conviction integrity unit. We call it the conviction review unit. Different communities call it different things. But what it is we receive applications from folks who said they didn't commit the crime. Now, to be perfectly blunt, most of those people don't qualify for review because there isn't new information. They just didn't like what the jury did. That's not the criteria. The criteria is new information. And this unit actually reviewed the case of Mr. DeMarlo Berry, a young African American who was convicted in his early 20s, I believe, of a robbery homicide. And he was convicted and he was sent to prison. 22 years later, people came forward, one individual in particular, and confessed to the crime that Mr. Berry was convicted of. And it was an eyewitness identification case from 20 years ago, so there was suspect information back then. That information is brought to me because it's my call at the very end. And I was convinced that Mr. Berry didn't commit this crime. So I caused his conviction to be vacated and for him to be released from prison. And I'm not trying to say that I get credit for this. The system worked. But that's an example of a person who didn't commit the crime. So I agree with you, Steve. There's not an absolute. We should absolutely have the death penalty or absolutely not. But that's why we have a democracy. so that people can get educated on both sides, all of the arguments, and make an informed decision in the form of an initiative or a referendum. Secondly, we haven't executed anybody in Nevada for 15 years, I believe it is.
I think it was '06 was the last
Exactly.
time,
And there was a person who was given the death penalty and wanted to die a couple years ago. He wanted to waive all his appeals. I don't remember his name offhand. It'll probably come to me. And wanted to die. And he still couldn't get executed, and then ended up committing suicide in prison. And now there's Zane Floyd. Zane Floyd was convicted 20 or so years ago of executing 4 people in a supermarket after, I believe, raping a woman in an apartment, okay? The jury found him guilty. The jury sentenced him to the death penalty. And here we are 20 some years later, still arguing over it. So we're spending a lot of money on death penalty cases, and I get it. So there's arguments on both sides, Steve, and they're very compelling on both sides. If you're the relative or the mother of the child that got killed, you might feel that the death penalty is appropriate. So,
I remember I was in Carson City, and I was sitting with then Governor Kenny Gwynn. Remember him?
Oh, absolutely. He was a gentleman. He came to my wife's campaign kickoff party.
Did he?
That's a sitting governor that came to my wife's campaign kickoff party for judge.
So I was in there with Governor Gwynn at the time, and I said to him, I said, we need to have a family law bill. And he goes, what do you mean by this family law bill, Steve? And I'm like, well, this is how it works. If a suspect who's convicted of rape or murder, and they're going to go to prison, the family, because family, the person of that family member that passed away or was raped could go into a room with this person, and whatever happens in there happens. And he looks at me, he goes,
that's kind of like frontier justice.
He goes, I don't think Nevada is ready for something like that yet. And I said, Governor, I said, you know how it is. I said, if somebody was to do something like that to one of your loved ones, you don't feel like you have justice until you actually do it yourself. You don't want the state to say, okay, lock them away for X amount of years, or the state. You want to do it because then you feel like you're revenging your loved one if you do it yourself. And he says to me, he goes, do you think the person that actually would do that to the person that did it to their loved one, do you think, how would they feel afterwards? I mean, initially, yeah, go get them, but afterwards, how would they feel?
It's a valid point.
And I said, Governor, I said, well, that's why the family picked somebody to go do it. But I think
I don't
think
we're ready for that.
It's the same thing John Porter told me about something else. But I have all these ideas, Mr. District Attorney. I have all these ideas, but sometimes that people think that they're too
ideas are fine. Acting out on them is another thing.
Far-fetched out.
Yeah.
So first thing I want to say is that I really appreciate you talking about the death penalty, because that was because I have a couple friends that are in the that are attorneys that are, I'll just be nice, they're not your biggest fan. Mm-hmm. And they're like hardcore liberal Democrats who absolutely are vehemently opposed to the death penalty. And they think there was a real shot to get it thrown out in the state of Nevada. And they said basically, I think Mr. Wolfson and Steve Sisolak kind of strong-armed the Senate to make sure that bill would die.
Well, that's false. Let me tell you this. I talked to the governor a few weeks ago.
They're all in the public defender's office, too.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I have friends. Scott Coffey, for example. Okay, Scott Coffey is a chief deputy public defender. He's been on the murder team for 20 years. He's been in the PD's office for whatever. and he is adamantly opposed to the death penalty. And he and I are good friends. So I can have good friends.
You came ready for this interview because that's one of the people I
No,
talk
I mean, I just tell the truth, Jim. I tell the truth. And I speak, I speak my mind. So I have friends that are on opposite sides of certain issues for me. Yeah. And, but what I do stand up for is the truth.
Right.
You know, people can have their own opinions, but they can't have their own set of facts. So I have two prosecutors that were in the legislature, okay? I did not speak to either of them. Didn't speak, text, phone, anything you want to call it, since before the legislature. Nor did I try and send them a message or anything like that. Number two, I spoke to the governor.
I got accused of that.
I spoke to the governor a few weeks ago about something, and that was the first time I spoke to him since before the legislature. I stayed away, other than my public testimony, from the people who were in charge of passing or not passing laws. So when people say that either the governor, now I don't know what the governor did, because that's him up there.
Right, yeah.
I know what I did, and I had no communications. You know why? Because number one, it's the right thing to do, not have communication. Number two, I didn't want to get accused of it like I did 2 years ago with that legislature.
Yeah.
These are independent folks that did what they felt was best.
Well, here's the reason why I have a lot of respect for anybody that's in your position, because you're in a tough position, and I think whether I agree with them politically or not, I think a lot of people are in tough positions right now that yield any kind of power, right? Because now we're a society of extremes.
Of extremes, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, more than ever.
And I think
more than ever.
I think you really did a good job of explaining how you felt about the death penalty, because you're right. Like, I talked to certain people and they're like, an eye for an eye. Mm-hmm. If you kill somebody, you should be put, and they don't even want appeals.
Right.
They want
that's the extreme the other way. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
and then you got the other ones that go, well, wait a minute. When we're born, we're inherently born knowing that it's wrong to kill another individual. Right. So why can we, but why can the state do it?
Right. No, those are all valid points, and that's why we live in a democratic society.
It's not as black as white.
No, it isn't, because there's good arguments on both sides. Yeah. I understand the arguments on both sides. Again, I think it should be left up to the people and let the people decide.
Like Cain and Abel.
Right.
Yeah. I don't go religious on me.
I go religious on you.
What else you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Veterans Court. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about where it was before Steve Wolfson. Mm-hmm. And because I believe Veterans Court was signed into law by then Governor Jim Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
Gibbons. You know.
It's okay. Gibson is the county commissioner.
I know. I'm always messing. And you know what?
Mistake.
You know what? I was in front of the county commissioner saying, "Hey, congratulations, Gibbons," and he's looking at me. I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Yeah. I mean, I'm always messing.
I think a lot of people would confuse those names.
Yeah, I'm always messing up. So, Veterans Court was acted into law in the state in 2008.
Okay.
And you came in when?
12.
And now we're in 21. So if you could talk a little bit about Veterans Court, where it was and where it is now.
Well, I think not only Veterans Court, but specialty courts in general are relatively new to the criminal justice system. 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have specialty courts. If you remember Judge Jack Lehman, how long you been in town?
95.
Okay, I think Judge Lehman started the first drug court in the 90s, I'm going to say. Okay. And that was a very unique thing because we had no specialty courts. And Jack Lehman brought the first drug court, basically a treatment court, to Clark County. And since then, obviously, we have expanded. Now we have the DUI courts. What are you drinking over there? We have the drug courts, we have the DUI courts, we have the competency courts. And then, of course, the Veterans Court. Okay, so the Veterans Court is a relatively new thing to this community. Again, I've been here 41 years, and it's only been in existence 14 years, whatever the number is. It's an excellent court. It's a treatment court, and it's also branched into most of our courts here in the community. We're in the municipal courts. The judge out in Henderson, Judge
Stevens?
Mark Stevens. Is it Mark?
Mark.
Yeah, does an excellent job. He's a veteran himself.
Marines.
Okay, you had to throw that in there.
Yeah, you always have to.
Okay, so Judge Stevens does a great job out there. Judge Harmony Letitia in our Las Vegas Justice Court does a great job. And they rotate assignments. Okay, different judges take on the different courts. And then obviously we have Veterans Court in our
They're
district
trying
court.
to get Judge, he was appointed judge now, when he was on the bench, J.P. then now Muni Lee in North Las Vegas.
Yes. Yeah, he lost an election, then was appointed out in North Las Vegas. Yeah, good guy.
For a seat that they got rid of.
True.
That's another story.
True. So I'm a big proponent of the Veterans Court. We have in my office our team of lawyers that are called special assignments, and they cover all the specialty courts. And I try and get a veteran who's a district attorney to do the Veterans Court.
And
I had one, and I may be doing in the next little while a reassignment to put another veteran.
who's it in district court?
Right now it's Glenn O'Brien. Okay, Glenn's
No,
done-
I'm talking about on the bench.
You know,
Is it still Linda Bell?
I think it was Linda and still is Linda, but I'm not sure. You know, COVID changed a lot of things because of reassignments and things.
Now, tell me, or tell us, what do you like about Veterans Court, and how could that help the veteran community?
The best part about Veterans Court, it is unique to veterans. And you bring in service providers that understand the issues that are unique to veterans. And I don't have to tell you gentlemen, you're veterans. PTSD,
Yeah.
okay? There's a lot of people that don't appreciate that, don't understand it, don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So to have treatment providers that can assess a veteran, you know, what is this veteran's needs, provides the best possibility for services, for treatment, number one. Number two, another good thing about Veterans Court is that if a person completes Veterans Court, the program, they can have their case dismissed. That's big.
Yeah.
That's big. And we provide, you know, veterans are no different in a sense than anybody else. If you have problems and you need treatment, we want to get you help. So that's what Veterans Court does. It gets people treatment and help so that they can live normal lives.
So let me ask you this real quick, though. Just came to my mind. But doesn't specialty courts, doesn't that make your job even harder? Like,
Well,
now,
it means
now,
it's
I
more
mean,
courts for me to handle.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Well, you know, my office has not received.
Where do we get, I mean, I guess to be more direct, where do we get to a threshold on specialty courts?
Okay, so
Do we just do away with regular courts and everything becomes a specialty court? Or do we cut down specialty
When
courts?
I was seeking the appointment to become district attorney in the latter part of 2011, the beginning of 2012, the district attorney's office was not in specialty courts. They had pulled out of specialty courts. I'm not criticizing the decision. Back in 2008, when we had a downturn in the economy, certain decisions had to be made, resource shuffling, etc. But excuse me, I made a commitment to get us back into specialty courts. The county has given me, over the last 10 years, a few positions, but everybody wants positions. Public Works wants positions. The Public Defender's Office
That's
wants
how government
positions.
works.
There's a finite amount of resources. But to answer your question, Jim, I have enough lawyers and enough staff that if I have to adjust some of the resource assignments to get the goal done, I do. So instead of having 6 lawyers on a particular specialty team, maybe I'll reduce it to 5 and take that one lawyer and plug it into special assignments.
Oh.
So we cover all the specialty courts.
Steve, what's your understanding of a veteran or a combat veteran? When you hear that, a veteran has done 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 tour in Iraq, or or maybe served in Vietnam and did 3 tours in Vietnam and Hanoi, and they do a crime, and you heard that they're a veteran. What is your understanding? What goes through your mind of this veteran?
Just because you're a veteran does not give you the right to commit a crime. Okay? Veterans are no different than other folks. Okay?
I agree with that.
But if a veteran is suffering an illness, and it could be depression. PTSD obviously is more serious. What about problems at home?
Right.
Lost their job. Okay? We view a veteran as a person that may have unique needs because they were a veteran. I had a young guy in my office who's a fighter pilot in the Navy. He wants to go to law school. And he's been a fighter pilot for, 6 or 8 years. And he's getting out of the service. And he wants to go to law school. He wants to start at Boyd. He's been accepted to Boyd. Long story short, in order to get into Boyd, he needs to do an internship in my office, which will allow him to get out of the Navy earlier. If he gets out of the Navy a few months earlier, he can then begin law school. And this was an impressive kid. I want to hire this kid when he gets out of law school. Just a nice kid. And I said, listen, I was never in the service. I missed Vietnam by a couple of years. I'm, my generation. My father was a captain in the United States Army. I've told you this before. My father was stationed in the Philippines, okay? I still have my father's original footlocker. This is Captain Lewis Wolfson.
How long was he in the military for?
Well, I don't know, 3 or 4 years.
Okay. So you're not a brat then?
No.
Okay.
I still have my father's World War II Army-issued Colt 45.
Nice.
I have the original gun. I have the original...
Is it fire?
Yes. What do you load it with? I'm sorry.
Magazine?
Magazine, and I have some of the original bullets and the holster.
I wouldn't trust those rounds, so.
No, I've taken them out. When I take the gun out, I use today's rounds. Anyways, this kid was so impressive that I said, I'm going to give you that internship, okay? But before you leave today, tell me an exciting, interesting story, because I was not a veteran, so I haven't experienced what you veterans have, whether you've seen combat or whatever. Long story short, he tells me the story about how he was stationed on a carrier, he was in the Gulf, and he was a nugget. A nugget was the term for a rookie pilot. And so they didn't fly any missions over the country of Iraq. And this was 2017, I think. But it was so hot that day in the Gulf that pilots and the crew that were loading the planes were literally fainting. So all of a sudden he was told, you're up. And the next thing he knows, he's flying a combat mission over Iraq. Okay? I tell that story because it had such an impact to hear somebody tell me that this is what they experienced. So the lawyers in my office, especially the ones that are in the specialty courts and veterans court, are sensitive. They attend the staffings with people that are trained and experienced about the issues involving veterans.
I bring that up, Steve, because, when you're hanging out at the water cooler, people start telling you stuff.
Okay.
And there's some folks that says, the DA doesn't like veterans. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, I hope he likes me.
He's one of the few. I like you too.
No, it's just...
It makes 2 of us.
I hear what you're saying, and I believe that somebody probably said that to you, but I don't know where they would get that from.
And that's why I want to emphasize that
you and I have known each other, we said 20 years.
Plus.
I've been on your show multiple times.
Yes.
Okay? I don't say no to you.
Yes.
I may not be available right away, but I don't say no. If I didn't like you, do you think I'd be here?
But you never invited me over for Thanksgiving dinner, though, so I'm still waiting for that invitation.
All right, well, Thanksgiving isn't the same. My parents are gone now, and it's a little different.
Well, the first time that I actually watched you, so-called in action, right, was, I think it was 2011. Went to an NAACP meeting with Chris Giuliani.
Okay, was I already the DA
No.
then?
No,
okay.
no.
Okay, go ahead. No. I got
You were looking
appointed.
for the appointment.
Yeah, you were looking for the appointment. And some of those questions that you had to field, those were tough.
I still feel tough questions.
Well, I know that, but I'm just saying that, like, and I'm not trying to start anything, but at the end of the day, it's like, to be perfectly blunt, I think maybe me, you, Chris, a couple other people, we were pretty much the only Caucasians in the room. And they were beating you up pretty good. And you handled that endorsement interview very well. Yeah. I don't think they particularly cared for some of your answers, but they ended up endorsing you anyway.
Yeah. Well,
so I just want to say that it's obvious that you're the type of person that no matter what group you're in front of or whatever, you stick by your principles, you let them speak for themselves, and at the end of the day, no matter what your race, ethnicity, religion, like that just comes through to everybody.
Well, that's good. I think that was a compliment.
Yeah. No,
that's true. You know, I try and employ...
Well, it was meant to be in it.
Thank you. I try and employ more people of color. I have an incredibly diverse staff. Some of the key positions in my office are occupied by females. The team chief of my major violator unit is Pam Weckerly. She's like the 4th or 5th highest ranked. The team chief of my gun unit is a female. The team chief of my gang unit is a female. The team chief of my domestic violence unit is a female.
But is it because they're female or because they're the most qualified?
Both. I want to promote diversity, but I also want to promote competency. I'm not going to elevate somebody just because of their gender or color.
Because right after people watch this, they're going to say that.
Plus, you got to understand that DA Wolfson here grew up in a house filled. I mean, not grew up, but he was in a house full of women. He was his wife and his 2 daughters. There was all kind of estrogen there.
I used to say even the dogs were females.
Yeah.
Even the fish were females.
No, I just wanted you to clarify that because as long as they're qualified, it doesn't matter to me. I just know that, like, in today's hyper-political state, unfortunately, where people are, if they see that, they're going to be like, oh, well, he's just elevating people in his office because of their ethnicity or gender. No, and I just want them to know that
they also are competent people. Right. Now, I will be honest, if I've got a person of color and a white person and I need to increase people of color in key positions, I may choose that person of color, okay? Black, Hispanic, Asian. I've got some great Asian folks in my office.
Any Native Americans in your office?
I don't think so.
But
I have some Indians
applied,
from the country of India, I mean.
No, from American Indian.
No, I know what you meant. Yeah, that's Native. Yeah. I don't think so. Part of the problem, Steve, is I can only hire from the pool of people that apply. Right. I have a training and recruiting chief deputy district attorney who we fly back east to go to certain colleges, black colleges, okay, to try and lure people from the East Coast to come out here because we don't have enough people of color that are applying.
You don't do anything with the Indian tribes that are in there?
No, because they have their own system. No. Once in a while, they will reach out to the DA's office for advice. How do you handle this kind of thing or that kind of thing? But it's very rare.
I wanna, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I want to go back to this Veterans Court because I want to try to understand how it works. So a veteran commits a crime. Could you just walk us through? A veteran commits a crime.
There's 2 ways for a person to be admitted into Veterans Court. Yeah. Way number 1 is the veteran, through his lawyer, can petition themselves. We want to ask the court to accept me in a Veterans Court.
It's not automatic.
No, it's not automatic.
So the prosecutor could say, no, I don't want this person to go to Veterans Court?
We can object, and sometimes we do. Okay?
And what would the objection
if it's
be?
A violent crime, I don't think you can get in if it's a violent crime.
Murder?
Yeah.
What's the least violent Aggravated assault?
Oh gosh, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I think you can get in with a DUI, with a domestic battery. You know, domestic battery is a violent crime, but if it's a misdemeanor, it's obviously less
But if
violent
there's
than a felony.
strangulation involved,
Well, that's what makes it a felony. But you know, the way number one is for the defense lawyer to say, I don't care what the DA says. I'm going to directly petition the court. But more commonly, it's the parties in a plea bargain agree that the person plead guilty, and as a condition of probation, they go to Veterans Court. So more often than not, let me just finish the thought. More often than not, we're agreeing for a person to get into Veterans Court.
But you gotta plead guilty though.
Okay, or well,
Who wants to plead guilty, especially if you didn't do it?
Well, if you didn't do it, then you shouldn't plead guilty. Okay, but remember this, Steve. Veterans Court, as I recall, allows for, upon completion of the program, for the case to be dismissed.
Right.
So you may plead initially.
And sealed.
Yes. You may plead initially, but if you complete the program, the whole case is dismissed. That's pretty good.
And sealed.
And sealed, of course. Sealing has never been easier. We changed some of the rules in the last few years with the legislature, lowering the time frames. It used to be 10 and 15 years to get a felony sealed. Now it's much quicker. Gross misdemeanors and misdemeanors, much easier to get records sealed.
I want to talk a little bit about, and I just, because you mentioned domestic violence, I want to talk a little bit about domestic violence with strangulation. How long is the statute of limitations from when the crime happened to when you need to you should report it right away.
Well, most are too.
Yeah, but you know, some people don't because of fear factors or financial, whatever, and whatever their reason might be, mental, whatever, kids, whatever. How long is the statute of limitation from when the situation took place to when you have to report it before the statute runs
I believe it's 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
So if a person was to report a domestic violence
2 years later, let's say. Is that your hypothetical?
Yeah, would your office go?
So what we would do in a case like that, no different than any other case, is look at the merits. We would ask, why did you wait 2 years? If the person has a legitimate reason, then we don't discount it, okay? You know, when you wait 2 years to report a crime, there's a reason, because most people report crimes right away, that night, in DV cases, okay? So if the person waited 2 years, the first question is going to be, why? And that's what the police will do, because they're going to report it to a police agency, and the police are going to interview this person and say, why did you wait, okay? There may be a legitimate reason, but when you wait 2 years on a DV strangulation, what don't you have that you would have had if you reported it right away? Physical evidence. Strangulation, there's marks and things of that nature.
What happens if that person has the marks?
2 years later?
I mean,
No.
pictures of the marks.
Okay. It's hard for me to give you an absolute on anything. You have to look at the whole picture. Okay, you took pictures? Why did you take pictures? And then you waited 2 years to report it? I think you're talking about a particular case, Steve. And you came in to see me about this. Okay.
I didn't want to say it.
I'm like smiling right now.
You and I are friends, and we can be honest, because I remember you approached me with this.
And I didn't want to name names.
And you actually came into my office with that woman, did you not?
No, you called her.
I thought she came in, but okay, I called her. But the simple answer is, it's hard for me to give you an absolute. Oh, we would absolutely do this or that, because you have to look at the entire picture. We have an ethical obligation to only file charges if we, number one, believe that the person committed the crime, and we can prove it in a court of law. Jim, you said something 20 minutes ago about the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. If we don't feel comfortable, how would you like it for me to charge you with a crime if I didn't think I could prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? That's my ethical obligation. So we may think the person did it, but because of proof problems, we can't prove it, we're not going to file.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right? It's like, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
That's exactly right. And sorry, I'm such a motor mouth, but
you're
care
fine, because people need to hear this.
Good.
You know, I mean,
I care about
are you
these
running for
things.
re-election?
Well, look at Steve.
Are you going to run for governor? Which one?
I am up for re-election next year.
Are you running for governor or are you running for re-election?
What was that pat on the? Hey, see, I told you I'd do it. I am a very fortunate person. I've had great jobs in my career.
Do you want to be governor?
I have been the district attorney, for
Carson
almost
City?
10 years, and I still have some work to complete. We're doing some great projects. In fact, when you're ready, whether it be today or in the future, I'd like to talk about some of the great projects. I told you about the IA court.
Yeah.
Real quickly, we're doing a new project called Project Redirect. It's the first pre-charge diversion program in the state of Nevada. Pre-charge. If you commit a low-level felony offense, generally what happens is you get charged, you're in the system for a few months, you get a lawyer, whether it's a private lawyer or the public defender, and then at the end of the day, in 6, 12, 18 months, you plead guilty to a misdemeanor, you do some counseling, and the case is over, right? Why are we waiting 6 to 12 to 18 months to get the case resolved and to get the person treatment? Drug, alcohol, whatever, okay? So what we're doing now is, for these low-level felonies, okay, we offer an opportunity for the person to go to a professional agency for an assessment. What's going on? Why'd you commit the crime? And they do an assessment with recommendations. And if they want, they can enter into a diversionary program for 6 months. If they complete the program, which is counseling, maybe some restitution, at the end of 6 months, we don't even charge them with a crime.
Oh, wow.
Don't even charge them. Saves money in the system. It gets them the help and the treatment early on versus 12 to 18 months later.
When's the last time you visited CCDC, by the way?
Personally?
Yes.
Oh, for a meeting pre-COVID.
Okay. Oh, so you've toured through it?
I've been in CCDC 30 times. When I was a private lawyer, I was visiting clients. Right. If you exclude that, I've been over there 30, 40 times for a variety of reasons.
You know that the Veterans in Politics Foundation, which is another one, we have a lot of litigants that are in family court. Mm-hmm. And one of the items that we look at is child support, child support enforcement. Yep. And a lot of litigants, they're complaining. They said that the district attorney's office is not enforcing the child support.
So you're talking about the custodial parent.
Yes.
Not the non-custodial who's under orders of support.
How does that work? So people can have a better understanding. What does a litigant have to do to enforce the child support order? How does it work?
So it's pretty simple in this regard. If a husband and wife or a couple have children and they separate, they can get lawyers and they can go into court and they can get a divorce with orders of support and custody and all that. Yeah. When the non-custodial parent fails to pay child support, the custodial parent can go back to their lawyer and say, hey, take that guy to court because he's not paying child support. But the vast majority of people can't afford lawyers. Right. Lawyers are expensive.
True.
So what do?
How much do you cost?
I don't cost anything today. I cost the taxpayer.
What were you charging an hour, by the way? I'm just curious.
Let me finish, because you raised an important point. What does that person do that's got 2 kids at home and the ex-husband lost his job?
Right.
He can't pay. Well, I'm sorry you lost your job. Get another one, but I got mouths to feed. That person can go to the district attorney's family support division. Remember about an hour ago, I told you I've got 4 divisions, and that division's on East Flamingo. I've got 11 lawyers and about a staff of 250 people. That person can go to DA Family Support and make application for free, for us to bring the non-custodial parent back into court to try and enforce those child support orders. And our goal is not to be harsh against that person. Our goal is to get them to pay. Right. Do they need job placement? Do they need us to help them, work with them?
You do job placement?
We can assist in getting jobs, absolutely. Sometimes people are without a driver's license, okay? Sometimes people get sent to prison and can't pay child support. Now they're out. They don't have a driver's license. Okay?
Let me ask you.
So we want to get that person back on track, making payment, and it's no cost to the custodial parent.
What is the, excuse me, what is the point?
One final thing, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
is
Please.
last year we collected $130 million for Clark County
Child
families.
support.
Yes, and arrears, which is back payment.
So you don't
Jim,
you don't That's a lot of
$130
money.
million?
you don't do alimony,
No,
and you don't do
property division or
property
anything like
division,
that.
just
Child support.
Child support only.
We establish paternity.
Yes.
If somebody, if we need to establish paternity, we do that.
Okay.
But it's basically child support.
So, at what point do you take someone's driver's license?
Well, that's a touchy
And then
issue.
when you do,
Yeah.
how are they going to get to work?
That's a touchy issue because it's a catch-22. We want to get their attention, but we don't want to inhibit their ability to pay.
Right.
So the driver's license issue is something we're working on. I don't believe we're taking people's driver's license anymore, okay? We will garnish wages.
Okay.
We will garnish tax returns,
Okay.
okay? But I don't think we're taking driver's license. I'm pretty sure of that.
Does the DA's office take a percentage, or is there any interest that they take?
No,
or
I
anything
think there
like
might
that?
be some fees, but no, the vast majority goes to the custodial parent. It's a fantastic program. When I took office, okay, the Clark County system, if you will, was like 53rd in the national performance ranking, because Guam is a territory, okay?
Puerto Rico.
We are now 9th.
Oh, wow.
In 9 years, we have gone from almost last to 9th place. And I'm very proud of the people that work very hard out there.
Yeah, because with no disrespect to your predecessor, and I won't name his name, but it's not that I liked him personally. It just, even when people accuse me of being some extreme right-wing crazy Republican, which I'm not, but there are certain things in life where it's just not black and white. Mm-hmm. You have to weigh things, and sometimes there is a compromise. Mm-hmm. And that individual just was a very black, but that's, he was elected, and that's what
And sometimes you don't dislike the person per se. You just dislike what the person did.
Right, yeah, and just,
Mr. District Attorney, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming on the program. I think that this is very inspiring, and people could understand you a lot better when they see you. And I know I've been asking you to do this for years, and as soon as I start talking about it, you're going to remember. And every time I mention it to you, you kind of like to go to Hawaii.
Oh, I know what you're going.
You like to go to Hawaii around that
December.
time.
Well,
You like to go to Hawaii. I'm like, why does he pick February to go to Hawaii all the damn time?
Maui in February.
Why can't he go in March, or June or something like that?
There's no whales. The whales are gone.
And I'm going to put this out there.
So what do you got? What's the date?
I'm going to put this out there to you, Mr. District Attorney.
What's the date,
And
Steve?
you know what? And I remembered when you and Phil Cohn was so graciously moderated the first ever the Shadow Judge.
Yeah, that was out at Shadow, the high school out
The
there.
high school.
Ridge, yeah.
Shadow
And
Ridge.
they told me that was the first time
Yeah.
they had so many judges
Yeah, that was a great. I
under
remember
a
that
different
one.
umbrella other than the courthouse, because they had bomb sniffing dogs that showed up.
That was a great program.
And we should do that again.
Let's do it.
But I don't know when, but we should do that again. And I remember Linda Young helped us find that high school. Who she's no
I
longer.
remember that program.
with-
That was
with
a
the
long
trustee.
time ago. That was 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah, John Lee was there too.
And that was very good. People got to see everybody all at once, like
Yeah.
one-stop shop.
Okay,
But anyways,
that was during an election cycle or something,
and that was the first time all the district court judges was going to be up at one
Exactly.
time, and I love that.
And it's great because the public learns about who to vote for.
Exactly, and we videotape. In fact, it's on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
But here's the thing. South Point Casino,
Yeah.
February 19th.
Saturday, February 19th,
Okay.
from 5, cocktail hours from 5 to 6.
Is it the gala, the annual
The
gala?
Valentine's Day Ball Gala. We would like you to be one of our speakers.
Let me check my calendar. Now, you know, Steve, that almost every year that I can think of, when I can't make it, I buy tickets for veterans.
I know. And the owner
Can't make it, I'll buy tickets for
the
veterans
owner of
this
the
year.
casino donated the room.
Fantastic. That's Mr. Gone.
Mr. Gone, yes, donated the room, and well, we'll take care of everything else, but donated the room, and I want to thank him for doing that. So it's Saturday, February 19th.
I will check my schedule.
You know, and you probably want to get a room in there, you know, and make it a little staycation, and what would you call it, and pretend that you were in Hawaii on that day.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on your show.
So
I appreciate it.
with that, because I know you're running for re-election, right?
Steve, I love my job, and I'm looking very closely at running for re-election, yes.
Oh, is that a definite?
There will be an announcement made shortly.
Okay. Thank you for coming on the program.
You're welcome.
Could you look at the camera and just tell folks final words, whatever you want to say, and a point of contact if you'd like to give it?
Sure. Well, Steve and Jim, thank you for having me on your show. I'm Steve Wolfson, the Clark County District Attorney. It's a pleasure coming on your show. I've been on your show many times, and I like talking about, you know, the issues that are important to veterans, of course. I like the tough questions, because the tough questions keep me on my feet, keep me on my toes, okay? And I'll be on your show again in the future. But with regard to veterans, I have an open door policy, and you know that. You've come into my office a number of times on anything. I have never said no to somebody coming in my office.
And every time I reach out to you, you immediately reach back.
Well, not always immediately,
Might
but
take
pretty
a couple
close.
days.
But that's the way I am. I enjoy dealing with people. It comes down to it. If you're an elected official and you don't enjoy people, you should not be in the business.
Sure.
So I will be back on your show again, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Jim, anything?
No, other than just thanks for coming on. I mean, and again, what you just said. Yeah, I mean, you always reach back, and there's certain people that don't. So I appreciate that.
Sure. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Folks, that's Steve Wolfson, Clark County District Attorney. We had a very, very enlightening discussion. We talked about many, many topics, and we appreciate the District Attorney coming on the show and explaining his position and his office. And this is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, Veterans in Politics. Until next time.